Rural Heritage on RFD TV is brought to you by Rural Heritage Magazine, a bi-monthly magazine featuring articles about farming and logging with draft animal power, small-scale diversified family farming and homesteading, and other aspects of our rich rural heritage. Rural Heritage Magazine, borrowing from yesterday to do the work of today. For subscription information, please call 319-362-3027 or order online at www.ruralheritage.com. In early summer of 2019, we visited Ken and Martha Laing at their Orchard Hill farm in St. Thomas in southern Ontario. A few months ago, we showed you some of the organic land management practices they currently employ on their farm. Today, we're going to look at some of the horse-drawn implements Ken uses with his Suffolk punch draft horses to make hay, prepare seed beds, sow grain, transplant vegetables, and more. A few of these devices were built by Ken from the ground up, and most were modified from their original design. Ken is a very thoughtful farmer, always looking for a better way to improve fertility and efficiency. We know you'll enjoy his equipment tour as much as we did. Don't go away.
So I'm a great proponent of this machine. It is one of the greatest machines the Amish have ever invented. And I'm sure they watch their conventional neighbors with these rolling harrows behind, making a beautiful seed bed, putting one front and back. What it does, it gives a spring tooth with really good depth control. So I can go out and, if I want to cultivate 1.5 inches, 2 inches deep, I can do it with this machine. Whereas those old spring tooths, you had to run them deep to be thorough, and then they were hard to pull and they left ridges.
The baskets let it float.
Yes,
at a certain height.
Yeah, they control the depth and also leave you pretty with a level seed bed, so they can go in and transplant or seed right after this machine. I don't have to, and I love this one that Shipsy made with a steerable front. And the whole thing about tongue weight, I used to use this with just 2 horses, but this year I thought I'll put 3 on it, but I'll make an adapter and use an aluminum tongue, and it's worked really well. And I tried to squeeze the 3-horse evener by making a wooden one, which I could make a custom size.
Yep.
Like Pioneers, there's actually a big gap in Pioneer's 3-horse evener. They could squeeze it in a little bit. It does allow for the tongue if it's being used on an implement with the tongue, but I was trying to really squeeze them in. Even then, the horses walk a little outside this machine, which I don't like so much. It'd be better if it was a 6-foot instead of a 5-foot, but there's a noticeable difference using 3 horses on this instead of 2. In terms of how long they can work and the fact you can run a little deeper. I don't think I ever buy a machine that I don't end up modifying. Like, they always make the levers on these things really short and you cannot operate it very easily.
Right.
So I added like 2 feet to that lever, and now I can put it in and out of gear.
Gives you more
on the
leverage.
fly. Yes. And I don't know, it makes quite a difference. Because I often have sod headlands, I'm taking it out of gear, turning. A lot of Amish just drag them around the headlands. They don't bother taking it out of gear, so maybe it's not such an issue for them, but I found it works better.
Save your shoulder.
Yeah. This is a Roller-Crimper with sort of a design collaboration between the Rodale Institute in Pennsylvania and this Amish fabricating company called I&J. Most of them are designed to be 3-point hitch, but I&J made a cart for this that I can pull it behind a Forecart and raise it up and down with an electrically driven hydraulic pump. And you can add water to this. There's a plug here. You can fill the drum with water to add even more weight. And with the hydraulics, the wheels will actually lift right up off the ground to transfer even the weight of the framework to the roller. Certain crops are quite suitable for termination with rolling. Buckwheat when it's starting to flower. Rye in the spring when it's near the end of its bloom period. You can roll it and knock it down and it'll stay there. Some people have success with vetch, but it's sort of a tricky one to get the timing right. And then my plow, I guess I'm never quite happy with machines. So it has a rigid tongue, unlike Pioneer's tongue bracket. It doesn't allow lateral movement, or not much. It'll keep it straight when you're finishing up. It's free to move up and down, but not so free to move side to side. And I also put a spring on the other wheel.
Oh, sure.
And that keeps. Sometimes you get surprised. You release that lever and it just goes flying forward. This sort of off balances it and improves your control. And then this is a Kverneland bottom, but it's one I got from a dealer here in Ontario. It's an older tractor one. It's not as big and as heavy as the one that Pioneer sells.
Right.
So a little better for horses, really.
Yep.
The whole machine isn't quite so heavy. Some of this machine, the Amish builder, a little overbuilt. But that bottom works really well in sod and clay. And of course it works well in lighter ground too.
And what's the receiver hitch on the back for?
We used to do a lot of plowing in the summer, plowing under hay crops or cover crops, and I don't have either, or the one up here that fits on it. It comes out here, it's got a big 2 tubes, and I can set cement blocks on there to hold the rear end down. Because when the ground gets hard in the summer, it starts to nosedive.
Okay.
Because you're pulling from way up here, and there's a little bit of a lever between this point and that line of draft, and it starts pulling your plow like that. It depends, on how you got adjusted here, but we found we had to put that on there. Also, some of my apprentices didn't weigh much more than 100 pounds, and they didn't really hold it in the ground as well as I did.
Right.
So, but this plow here, it has a beam that's quite a bit it's almost 6 inches longer than my old one. Because when they started using Kverneland bottoms, they had to make it longer.
Right.
Because they stick out a lot farther.
Right. Yep.
And actually, I had to modify this. I put that big extension in there to get the rolling coulter up near the point.
Yep.
And I like having a tail wheel on there. And my apprentices did too. The old one, if you backed it up, it folded up and threw you off.
Yeah, so this is there's a lot of modifications to this plow.
Yes. This is a no-till drill designed to be used with horses. We pull it behind a forecart with 3 horses on it. It has sort of heavy-duty double disc openers. There's springs on there that are very easily adjusted to different weights, but it's the overall weight of your drill that determines how much weight you can put on each pair of openers. Hi there. And then there's a wheel at the back, both firms the soil around the seed, and it also controls the depth so that it doesn't run too deep in loose soil. And this drill has a big box here for bigger seeds like oats and barley, and then it has a seed box here for smaller seeds like the grass seeds. Makes it more flexible. And then this machine has been sort of updated, modified, so that it has liquid fertilizer attachment. So we have a battery running an electric pump, and in the tank we mix fish emulsion with molasses, and then that's fed down this translucent tube right into the furrow with the seed to sort of wake up the biology in the seed trench early in the spring.
You control the flow with each one of them with that valve there?
No, that just keeps it from dripping. I've got a pressure regulator at
Sure.
the front that I can use to adjust.
That's just to shut it off.
Yeah, it keeps this tube from draining back all the time, and then when you turn it on and off, there'd be a delay before the
Sure.
liquid got down to the trench. It's sort of a sophisticated thing. And then this is the drive wheel that drives my metering mechanism for the seed. On an end wheel drill like this, on a no-till drill, sometimes you run into a hard patch of ground and your end wheel will come right off the ground, and if you were using it as a drive, it would quit driving. So that's why you'll often see these extra wheels that are engaging the ground, and it can sort of follow the ground up and down. So there's a battery here that runs the pump here. This is the pressure regulator. You can change the flow And these are just little sight valves, so if something gets plugged up, it lets you know right away.
Yep.
And then this is a tank to contain the solution.
And where do you get the fish emulsion from?
Oh, there's dealers that sell it for mostly organic growers, but some conventional growers will use it as well.
And you were telling me that not all horses are calm around smelling it.
Yeah, it's pretty stinky stuff, and horses can be take exception to it. I've had a couple of horses try to run away with me when I was spraying and had a wind behind me and blowing the smell towards them. So you do have to be a little careful with it. Other horses don't mind, so it's sort of an individual thing.
Well, you basically built this from parts.
That's right. So the openers were salvaged off a tractor drill. This was an old drill press that I used with horses, but it was originally a tractor drill press as well. I had to cut the seed box in half to make it small enough. And the framework we fabricated it pretty heavy because the weight of this drill determines, how much pressure you can put on each of those openers. And you're working in firm ground. It's not like planting into tilled ground, so the machine has to be pretty heavy.
And you put 3 horses on this usually, you're saying?
Yeah, 3 horses can handle the drill. I do have a root lifter up in the shed that we use under a lot of root crops like carrots, parsnips. So it's got a parallelogram action to it, like a corn planter, or to keep the angle on that blade the same as it goes up and down. So there's about a 15-degree slope on that blade, and that sucks it down, just like a plow point sucks a plow into the ground. And it's this parallelogram thing that keeps that thing going up and down straight. If you just put that on a pivot, the angle would change as it went out of the ground. And then again, it has a strap winch. That's not a board, that's solid steel.
I was going to say, that's iron, yeah.
I did need some weight there to get it in the ground, especially if you're working at a time of year when it gets dry.
That's some considerable weight.
Yeah. And I usually ride on there as well to add extra weight.
Did you make this?
I did.
And is this modeled after other ones you've seen, or did you invent this?
Well, a little bit of both. I'm not that original. A young guy in, I think, Washington State had tried building one, and some of my apprentices were friends of his, and they showed me a video of his work, and I saw that, and that's pretty neat. But he made it, there were a few errors in terms of design, I think, that made his not work so well. So I tried to correct them, and this one worked pretty well.
How deep does it go?
It theoretically 22 inches, but I'm not sure I've ever had that deep. And that's why it takes 4 horses. You get much beyond a foot. It's a tough pull.
Yeah.
It's really just loosening the soil. It's about 16 inches wide. And this piece of steel was just a lucky find at the local scrapyard. I picked it up off the ground. It was sharpened, beveled on one side, and it's a good thing it was. You cannot touch it with a grinder.
Is that right?
I don't know what it's made out of, and it's never broken. And I mean, these are extra strength steel, but I just welded them on, and I've never broken it. But we don't have big stones either.
Yeah, right.
And my horses, usually if they run into something tough, they stop and look back and tell Ken to fix it.
That's good.
I had a pulling horse once. I never should have bought him. If he hit something, he just jammed into the collar like what he was trained.
Yep.
Oh.
This equipment over here, there's your spreader.
Yeah, and I didn't pull it out. It has been modified because as your ground gets more fertile, you don't need so much compost. So it actually has a spinner spreader attachment on the rear, so I can spread quite low rates of compost.
Yeah.
Essentially, I've taken off what's called the wide spread, and that was actually like a lime spreader attachment for a new idea spreader, I guess, what they were. And it actually works fairly well. I still have trouble getting below, 3 tons per acre, but that's a pretty low application. And then this is a plug transplanter unit that's been modified so I can pull it with horses. This is the drive wheel here. It's connected with chains, and it drives this carousel. You drop the plugs in there, and then it rotates slowly and drops the plugs down into a tapered shoe. The tapered shoe will hold the plug until a little finger is timed to push it out and space it the distance you want. And you can change that by changing the sprockets on the drive. And it has a tank for liquid. We use water, and we'll put water in with the plugs, and it helps get them through till they get established. And it has a strap winch here for lifting the whole thing up and down. Puts it effectively puts it in and out of gear, and lifts it up so it doesn't plant on the headlands. And originally these transplanter units just had one seat, but we put 2 seats on here. That way people can don't have to work so fast when you're planting close together. You do have to train your horses to walk pretty slow, sort of baby step along. And we also have row markers here for marking the next row. And we have a big tray holder at the back there where we can store extra trays of plugs.
Who does the transplanting? You're driving the horses, probably.
I usually drive the horses, and apprentices, Martha, Ellen, yeah. They'll all take turns doing it. And usually we have somebody walking along behind in case a plant needs some adjustment, or somebody can tell us whether it's planting properly. Occasionally it'll plug up, so you want to know. And like a lot of horse farmers, I started out using old side delivery rakes that were designed back for horses.
Right.
But these are actually, there's a significant improvement, and these are ground drives, so they're easy to pull behind a forecart.
Sure.
But the angling of the end wheels gives a sort of side thrust to the movement, whereas the old ones just tended to roll it in front, and the fact that they were angled let the stuff out, but if you got into really heavy stuff, it would just ball up in front of it until it plugged. Yeah. So these were quite an improvement, even though it's old and rusty. It still works.
Oh, sure. Well, that's what I did more than anything with horses, was rake and take hay.
Uh-huh.
We had a kick tether that was like crazy.
Yeah, I wore out a couple of those. They just didn't seem to last. I mean, they were old.
Rattle.
Yeah, too many moving parts.
Yep.
These are much more durable,
Yep.
but they do not work well. And if you have a tailwind, it comes back and start wrapping, and that can be quite a nuisance. The newer ones, the sort of horizontal reels work much better, but they seem to be even more expensive.
How many forecarts do you have?
Just 2. I have Pioneer Forecart up at the buildings. But I like this Forecart. It's sort of an advanced design, so it's got an aluminum tongue, which is quite a bit cheaper, or lighter.
More expensive.
Yeah, it's a little more expensive. But it also is very easy to change. Whereas it takes a half an hour to put the tongue, offset the tongue on a Pioneer Forecart. This one here just has a single pin in here that I can pull out by hand, and then I can balance it and shift it over to there without any tools. And it makes changing from 2 horses to 3 quite a bit easier. Actually, a lot of the time I'll just leave it set up for 3 and I don't have to switch it around, but with my hay tools I often use both forecarts. And then this here allows you to reposition the platform or where the axle is in relation to the seat to balance it.
Yep.
So that's actually quite handy as well, so that you don't have a lot of weight on your horse's necks.
Simple, elegant solution. Just a screw like that.
Yeah. Amish engineers.
Yeah.
And this is an old disc. I mean, it's one thing the Amish haven't improved on. I don't know of anybody that makes a single horse disc that's a good design. A few people have tried, but they don't last long. These were very flexible, and nobody's ever gotten it figured out. I mean, most of the Amish just go to a bigger machine, like a double disc, put more horses on it. But for our scale of farming, this is good. So it was just a beat up machine. I had to add all these scrapers, and it's now in its second tongue, but haven't worn it out yet.
Does the lever change the pitch of the...
Yeah, and this is very common in Canada to have what's called an in-throw. Yeah, this is going to adjust the
Okay, sure.
angle,
Okay.
and that's sort of
Right.
considered out of gear.
Yep.
But in the United States, it's much more common to have an out-throw disc for some reason.
Right. Right.
There are subtle differences between the two countries. Like our plows are more English style plows. When after the American Revolution, I think they threw out everything that was English. My I&J mower, my goodness, that is a revolution in hay cutting machinery.
So this is just a year or two old.
Oh, no, it's probably 5 years old
Oh, is
by
it?
now.
Okay.
It stays inside. I mean, it's an expensive piece of machinery, and they've gotten even more
Well, yeah.
expensive. But, you know, the engineering in that bar is what makes it so amazing. And my apprentices, they would get really frustrated with an old-fashioned hay mower, because if you didn't steer really accurately, and with lodged hay, you couldn't see. Like, it doesn't even fall down. So you had to go by a wheel track from the round before, and it would just plug every 4 feet if they weren't driving just perfectly. And of course they're not driving perfectly. It's their first year driving horses. I guess it's one machine I haven't made many improvements to. I mean, these guys, they are very ingenious.
Yep.
This is the finger reader. Like,
Oh yeah.
it's got a harrow sitting up against it, but 3 rows of teeth, and they're just, you know, those spring teeth. And there were ones like this that had wheels. I've seen pictures of them. And then they were so wide they folded up, but they were actually designed to be horse-drawn.
Uh-huh.
Next week, we'll learn about some of the creative techniques the Laing family uses to add value to their harvest at Orchard Hill Farm in southern Ontario. This program is available for purchase. To order your copy, please call 319-362-3027 or visit www.ruralheritage.com. Rural Heritage is a bi-monthly magazine dedicated to draft animal farming and logging, as well as other aspects of our rich rural heritage. It is published by Mishka Press, which also offers a complete line of Back to the Land books, DVDs, and calendars. Call or write for a catalog or subscription information, or visit our website at www.ruralheritage.com.